opportunity to pick my daughter up from school much, but I had to on one occasion. And when I went to that school to pick her up, they wouldn't let me take her. Well, I went with ID, went back to my car, brought some more ID, they wouldn't let me take her. And it wasn't until my daughter came down the hallway and said, "Yeah, that's my dad," that they let me take her. I didn't get mad at those people. They were protecting my daughter. And I didn't get mad at you. When the judge read the indictment and all the women frowned up and all the men pulled back, I didn't get mad at you. We are a society that protects our women and our children, and there's nothing worse. It's nothing worse in this type of case except one thing: an innocent man being charged. In this type of case. And he paused, the lawyer, and he stopped talking. And it was almost as though he was allowing them to assess something else. The environment has shifted again. And there's another word. Inside of your guts. Yell it out. Just a word inside of your gut. What is that word? Yell it. Don't think about it. What is it? Innocent. Maybe he's not guilty. What's another one? Huh? Now we stop right there when he says falsely accused. That's a word defense lawyers love to hear, right? But how do we get from what's inside of your gut, pervert, to falsely accused within 2 minutes? A story. A simple story. Can y'all skip a hand for me, folks? Opening statements. Opening statements. Man, do you know how important opening statements can be when you can put on a case? Charlie, you know sometimes we can't put on cases. But what about when you can put on a case? Look, I love stories, so if I were a prosecutor, here is how, and I'm glad we don't have any prosecutors in here. How many of you heard a prosecutor get up and say this? And the evidence will show, and the evidence will show. Man, I wouldn't do an opening statement like that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you had been at Travis in Maine, April the 14th in 2015, right across the street, you see the Mulberry Apartments. Room 116, the door is open, and Miss Smith is walking toward the door. She's going to meet her sister. Her sister is 2 hours late, but her sister is never late. She walks to the front door and she pushes it open. And the room is spotlessly clean as usual until she gets to the kitchen. For when she gets to the kitchen, there's a red arc of blood on the wall, and on the floor is her sister. And her head is sliced open like a watermelon. And she screams. And she screams. and she screams. She didn't stop screaming until she heard the noise in the hallway. And then she remembered her niece and nephew, and she ran to the door, pushed that door open, and her niece was bending down with her hand over her brother's mouth. And she said, "That man is going to get us. That man is going to get us. That man is going to get us." And they took that little girl to a room 3 weeks later, and they had 6 men stand in the middle of the room on the other side of the glass. They'd walk to the middle of the room, say a few words, and walk back. Walk to the middle of the room, say a few words, and walk back. And when the man in the third spot walked to the middle of the room and said a few words and walked back, that little girl said, "That man is going to get us. That man is going to get us." And ladies and gentlemen, that man is in this room. And he's sitting right over here. You talk about the shift in energy in the room. The room is shifted again. And there's a word inside of your gut about how you feel about this room. What is that word? Yell it out. How does this room fear? What's the word? Fear. You know what, I'm running out of time because I want to get into a lot of it. Fear. I know in that opening statement, I'm creating fear. And you know what? I can just about sit down. What's our attitude right now about that little girl? Want to protect her? Who are we protecting her against? What can we do to hurt him so he will never hurt her? Put him away. So we don't really need a trial, do we? I'm serious. Let's go directly to the deliberation room. Let me show you what's scary about this. What if that little girl comes to trial and says, "Y'all got the wrong guy. That's not him." You don't have to tell me. Some of you are saying to yourself, "That little girl is wrong. She was mistaken." And the jury has already said this little girl is wrong in spite of her evidence. You know why? I'm going fast because I know I'm running out of time. You know why? Because you saw it. Jurors will believe what they see. You saw it. You felt it. Doesn't matter what the witness says. You've concluded. You've made up your mind what you saw in spite of the evidence. In spite of the evidence. Okay. Look, I use some techniques. And I'm kind of run through this because I know everybody's tired. You want to get out of here and go watch the Astros. I'm just amazed they didn't have 3 people in here today, really. What techniques did I use, folks? Anybody tell me? I use techniques, and I'm going to go over them with you so you can use them. What techniques did I use? Anybody tell me? She said it. I spoke in the present tense. It was as though it is happening now, not last week or 3 years ago. Present tense. What's another one? Repetition. Who said that? Good. When did I repeat it? The scream. The scream. And she screamed. And she screamed. And she screamed, and I said it 3 times on purpose. You know why I slowed down between each scream? Can anybody tell me? Excellent. That's getting there, but what does it relate to? You hearing your mother's voice. Let me explain to you what I mean. I gave you time to hear your mother's voice, and I gave you time to hear your scream. Each of us has a scream that we've heard in our lives, and she screamed. You had to hear your scream. You had to hear your scream. And she screamed. You know why? Because if I put it in the present tense, and you hear the screams, and I use all of the senses that I could use, you're not a juror who's watching a case. You are in the case. And you have seen the incident, and you have fear. So we're not going to let this guy go. So oftentimes we have impossible cases. I'm only using one war story here. I represented a gentleman who was charged with 11 different felonies in 2 days. Criminal episode. He committed everything but a capital murder and a murder in 2 days, one back behind the other. The state was asking for 60 years. We had to go to trial. Impossible. My client was not somebody you would like, Ernie. How do you tell the story? Opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, Susie Brown is 43 years old now, but when she was 20, she was pregnant with her first child. And it was a glorious day for her because she wanted to have her own child like most young ladies. Oh, she loved her niece and nephews. So when she had that child was special to her, and he did well. Kindergarten through about the 3rd grade until about the 4th grade, she began to notice he couldn't keep up with the other children. The teachers also put him in a special class, and he did well for a while. Then they had to take him out of that class because he couldn't keep up with the other kids. Eventually, they took him out of the school altogether and sent him to another school. He did well there for a while, but then they had to take him out of that and they sent him to another school out of state. And when he went to that school, he was sexually assaulted by some of the people who worked in the institution. He was eventually taken out of that, and he was taken to a school where they gave him the proper medication. And he was able to be normal like others. I took my papers and I sat down. And you know what was amazing? I don't have to tell you. You know that he was not on his medication. I don't have to tell you. For an opening statement does not only paints a picture and lets you make the final decision as to what happened, What was amazing to me was that when the prosecutors during punishment start taking all of his judgments and sentences and all of this and started showing to the jury how the jury turned on the prosecutor. Why? Because they had made a connection to the mother. Who's your characters in your opening? When you tell in your opening who's your characters. How many of you ever been to the VA hospital? Houston? Now watch this question, and I usually don't like to ask this question anymore. How many of you were born after 1984? After. Only one or two people, and it's kind of scary when I say this. I'm going to take you, those of you, to the VA hospital in 1984 in August the 12th. And we're going to go into the front room and go up a set of elevators. And as we go up to these elevators, we're going to go up to room 913. When we get up to 913, there's a lady who's passing by us with a sheet like this, and she's looking through it. We get to the door, there's not a door there, it's a sheet. Push that sheet open, and there is an old man lying on his stomach with his leg crossed, sort of like that. He seems to have difficulty breathing. It's like he has asthma, he's frail, and he's thin. You know what? You know what? If I ask you who took you to school on your very first day, you're gonna tell me it was your mom, not me.